Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Energy Markets podcast. It is the 20th of October, and of course, the oil markets are on an upward trend this week, looking like the second week where we're going to see oil prices close higher. Clearly, the momentum is underway, particularly driven by the geopolitical risks that are impacting the neighborhood. We have Brent up this morning about 1%, well above $93. Before we get sort of bogged down in the region as such, which is kind of inevitable these days, this week, it is Friday. Let's step back, if we can, from a perspective outside the region, where we have Neil Atkinson, former head of Oil Markets Division at the International Energy Agency, getting ready for big rugby matches there this weekend. Of course, Ireland isn't there, so that means all rugby matches are irrelevant. But nonetheless, Neil, on more serious matters, the oil markets are reacting to the crisis in the Middle East, but there's no great overreaction yet. How do you read it?
Well, yes, because fundamentally there is as yet no threat to oil supplies. And if you'd see no threat to oil supplies and everything else in the market remains the same, there is no justification for a big ramp up in prices. Yes, there has been a degree of increase, which is the sort of thing you normally get when there's a major geopolitical event like this. But so far, we have not seen any actual physical interruption to energy supplies. And as long as that remains the case, then I don't see why prices should see any increase as a result of what's going on currently. Just the final quick factor to add here is, if, for the sake of argument, it were seen that Iran is directly and visibly involved in an escalation of this conflict in the northern part of Israel, then that could change. But we're not there yet. This is more of a slow burner, I think, than perhaps a lot of people thought at first, when the attacks on Israel, and then it was an expectation there would be a massive Israeli response relatively quickly, which has been the case perhaps in the past, although not obviously on the scale that we've seen here. But this seems to be more of a slow burner than we first thought, and we'll just have to wait and see if there is any escalation and thus any impact on the price.
Ali Al-Riyami, consultant and former Director General of Marketing at the Ministry of Energy and Minerals in Oman. Ali, welcome back. Overnight, we have had reports of the U.S. Navy in the Red Sea shooting missiles out of the sky coming out of Yemen. Does this look like it's moving towards escalation, and where oil supplies and oil trading routes could be challenged, do you think?
Good morning, Sean, and nice to see you again after Fujairah. Indeed, I mean, I fully agree with Neil. We haven't seen any impact yet on the supply and demand side, and with this kind of act, not necessarily from Yemen or from Houthi, but anywhere in the region here, it might cause some escalation. So yes, you are right, but this is the first act to be seen in this region, and because it comes from Yemen, then there is no too much threat on a supply side, but we will have to see what is going to be the reaction from United States and his alliance in the region. But we hope that this will be like an individual act, which we hope that it is not from a group of like Houthi or anything like that. Because if it is from there, then I think we will be seeing very soon some escalation and also some interference from America and others in Yemen and other region in other countries in the region. I hope that it will stop over there and it will not escalate, because we don't want to see a disturbance on the supply side, and we don't want to see also a war coming into this side of the world. We saw so far that everything it's been in one area so far, which is Gaza and north of Israel at the moment, with some bombs here and there with Hezbollah. But we hope that will stay that way at least at the moment, without getting anybody else get involved. Inshallah, we hope that.
We hope. Daniel Rahmat, Senior Energy Security Consultant based out of Tehran. Daniel, overnight, we also saw the US, British, and German governments warning their citizens who reside or live in Lebanon to leave the country with rather immediate sort of effect. That would indicate their outlook for the escalation of this crisis is growing, even after their multiple trips to the region, President Biden included, the warnings coming after that. So not great signals from those capitals. Your thoughts on where, I know you're sort of limited as to what maybe you can say from the Iran, based in Iran perspective, but nonetheless, this has been a very positive year, if one could use that word, for Iran. It's had rapprochement. It would appear positive relations with Saudi on the telephone, the leaders there. We've Iran exporting as much oil as it can, really, and so forth, and some talks with the US ongoing through the year about trying to get some kind of Iran nuclear deal or something. But a lot of positive, you would say, steps as compared to last year, where there was none. Your thoughts on Iran? Would they sacrifice all of that progress in this current crisis? What's your thoughts?
Hi, Sean. Yes, it's a little bit confusing whether Iran is approaching towards a sort of peace with the other countries in the region, or it's preparing for a bigger sort of conflict or clash with Israel or something. If we consider the politics of the region, the geopolitics of the region, we have four pillars in this region: Saudi Arabia and its allies, the Gulf nations, also Egypt and some part of the Lebanese government, Iran and its allies, including Syria, to some extent the Iraqi government and the militias in Iraq and the other proxy forces, including Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and also some Afghan forces in Afghanistan and Syria, and Turkey with some, let's say, limited number of allies, including Qatar, Azerbaijan, and also the government of Libya. So we have we have Israel somehow alone in this region because of the differences Israel has with the other countries. These forces sometimes clash and sometimes make synergy against the other one, and sometimes go to a sort of rapprochement. I think the Iranian Saudi rapprochement and also some the other deals Iran has made with some other countries, including Egypt, Jordan, blah blah, is just limited to the camp of Saudi Arabia. It has nothing to do with Israel. Nothing between Iran and Israel was resolved, and no progress in this relation was. On the other hand, we have the Abraham Accord, which is the peace between the Saudi and its group with Israel, and also some kind of negotiations between Turks and Israel. I think these kind of rapprochement, if you can call it, between Turkey and Israel, and also Saudi Arabia and Israel, I think this is not naturally a sort of peace. This is a preparation for a clash with Iran. This is what Iran considers. They want to reduce the level of tensions with Arab nations to be free-handed for clashing with Iran. At the same time, we saw many geopolitical conflicts, if you can't call them crises, and also a war in Caucasus. Azerbaijan was supported by Israel, Armenia was supported by Iran, and we can see the increase of level of tensions between Iran and Israel. There is a theory here that Iran possibly has supported the Hamas attack on Israel because the Iranian military or Iranian intelligence were confident that Israel will definitely attack Iranian nuclear facilities. So based on this theory, Iran has started a sort of let's say a domino of crisis and clashes for Israel in the region to prevent the Israeli attack on Iranian facilities.
Well, there's
So
certainly so many different threads that one could connect the dots to. That's how complicated the region has become in the last year because of all of these so-called rapprochements. Saudi and Israel were close to a deal. Saudi and Iran, the return of Assad in Syria. So many different corridors of conversations, of agreements, and yet when a moment comes like this, which of those threads unravel or are connected is really much more complicated than usual to be able to read the tea leaves on. But Neil, meanwhile, back at the ranch, so to speak, of fundamentals in the oil markets, we have some pretty robust sort of grounding for this return in oil price, even without the crisis in the region. Obviously, we were up to 95, 96 on Brent before this latest crisis began. But now we've seen crude and fuel inventories in the US fall again, down to somewhere near 10-year lows. Inventories in the United States. We've got obviously China continuing to buy, to import significant amounts of oil, and the economic forecast for China's growth this year does seem to be going, be thereabouts on target for 5%. Ultimately, my point, Neil, is there still fundamentals in this dog of a market?
Well, yes, there are always fundamentals. They never go away. And what has surprised me as the year has progressed is that the rosy forecast for global oil demand growth that we've seen from some analysts and some agencies, I thought those rosy forecasts would be pared back as the year went by. We still have plenty of growth, but not quite as strong because of underlying weaknesses in some sectors of the economies around the world, rising interest rates in Europe, the United States, and elsewhere. But that turns out not to have been the case. And the expectations for 2023 remain that global oil demand will grow by roughly 2 million barrels a day or a bit more, depending on your point of view. So there still seems to be plenty of support out there from demand. That's definitely the case. But of course, on the other side of the barrel, on the other side of the balance, we've got the OPEC plus voluntary cuts. And, they are not insignificant, and they are gradually having an impact on the market, particularly in the sour barrels. And these forces of demand remaining relatively robust, supply being held back voluntarily by key players in the market is helping to underpin the market. Weekly US stocks numbers, frankly, I don't get too excited about those because they're subsequently revised, and then you sometimes find that the revisions show a very different picture from the initial publication. But the point about US stocks and 10-year lows is that I think we need to look at the US stock situation through a slightly different prism than we're used to doing. We talk about US stocks as if US oil production had not nearly tripled in the last 15 years. 5 million barrels a day in 2007, whatever the number was. We're at 13 million barrels a day crude production today. So the levels of stocks, you could argue that the levels of stocks that are required to be held for the operational reasons in the commercial side of the balance, and most certainly on the strategic stock side of the balance, the requirement is lower than it was. So I wouldn't get too excited about the stocks being perceived by some as being low, because I don't actually think they are.
Ali, we're now trading December contracts, and soon that will expire, and we're moving into January, and inevitably delivery of crude oil is certainly now into 2024. Whatever you buy today, you won't be getting it till some point then. But the outlook for the first quarter is really the question now. And while we had a forecast for serious tightness and the market being undersupplied in Q4. The outlook for Q1 is increasingly the opposite. And with the news overnight that Venezuela has done a deal with the US and they'll be slowly but surely rehabilitating. We got Iraq, northern Iraq, Kurdistan seems to be getting back its pipeline and more supply coming out of the likes of Guyana, while the outlook for weaker economic growth in the major global economies is also on the forecast. How do you see the first quarter and how OPEC, putting aside all the geopolitical crisis at the moment, but how OPEC manages the outlook for the balance of supply and demand?
I think, Sean, that the decision from OPEC to continue cuts, also the militarily cuts from Saudi Arabia, it did work the last few months and last year and so on. So I think so far, I think the reasons for those cuts to be there, they are still there, and I believe that maybe now OPEC and also Saudi Arabia with his alliance is that now they are targeting the inventories in Asia rather than only balancing the market. I think the market is already, we have seen that it's not only balanced, but there is a short of supply maybe. So I think if they are going to continue, then the reason or the target will be the inventories and to allow the market to be on a backwardation for the longest period that they can do. And this is maybe could be the reason maybe for OPEC also to continue for next year's to continue the cuts. To continue the cuts for next year also, the first quarter of next year. But we will know all of that when they meet in the end of November. What will be the decision? What I assume that I think it is working. It is going to be there for at least for another 3 or 4 months of next year. But let's wait and see. We hope that things will change, maybe, but I think now the focus is on inventories rather than balancing the market.
Daniel, as we said earlier, one of the big stories of the year has been the increase in Iran exports to the market and primarily getting to China. What's your outlook, again, putting all the geopoliticals aside, that for Iran to continue the sort of recovery of its oil industry, even expand possibly production capacity in the new year in which more supply could come from Iran? Your thoughts and outlook for Iran moving into a new year?
Sean, there are two very different narrations about the volume of Iranian oil exports at the moment.
Okay.
One is supported by tanker trackers and guys like them, including the Bloomberg, and the other one is data coming out from FGE, Kepler, also Vortexa, and these intelligence firms are telling us that energy intelligence firms are telling us that the volume of Iranian exports is about 1.5, 1 maximum 6, but the Kepler, tanker trackers and the others telling us it's about 2 million barrels per day. I think, based on my investigations in National Iranian Oil Company and my discussions with other colleagues around the globe, the second group's narration, FGE and Kepler and the others, is much closer to the reality and is more precise. So, and most of that oil is going to China. Let's say all of that oil at the moment is going to China. Very limited oil is going to Venezuela, also gas condensate, and some goes to Syria, but most of that is going to China. The volume of Iranian oil products, based on the minister's latest statement, is 3.3 million barrels per day, and that has increased something about 100K during the last months, and it's going to continue to increase. I don't believe it would increase very, very significantly in the first quarter, but possibly 100, 200,000 barrels would be added. But Iran is increasing the production. Please consider that it looks that a part of Iranian oil is just coming, a very big part of the new oil, fresh oil is coming from new fields. It's not reviving the previous production, the pre-sanction production. It looks that the Iranian old oil fields have witnessed a sort of decrease of level of production because of underinvestment. So Iran is developing new oil fields, and the new oil is coming from fresh fields, I mean. So there is a chance for 400, 500,000 barrels of increase during the course of next year.
And that's a lot when you consider that the demand growth for 2024 on current projections is only 1 to 1.5 million barrels a day. So if you've got a few 100,000 barrels coming from Venezuela, a few hundred more just from those two, Iran and Venezuela, it's you start
and also
to see
Kurdistan.
And Kurdistan, of course, yeah, which starts to indicate that hence my survey question today, which is about to pop up. Will indeed OPEC and Saudi and all of the campers together have to cut even further rather than simply roll over? Saudi will not only have to roll over cuts into Q1, but OPEC Plus will need to cut further to accommodate new supply from the Americas as economies weaken in Asia, US, and EU, in order ultimately, one would say, to maintain the balance of the market, to maintain current oil price levels in the mid 80s to mid 90s, I suppose, that actually rolling over won't be enough. They'll have to do further cuts. That's the question. Neil, your thoughts on some of those points? And the big news overnight, it has to be said, it seems in this day and age that a deal between Venezuela and the United States over rehabilitating the oil relationship there and lifting of sanctions. That's any other day of the week, that would be front page news. Your thoughts on its meaning in particular for the oil industry and Venezuela's ability to sort of reclaim its market, its customers, and ultimately its production capacity?
Yeah, well, when I ceased working for Petroleos de Venezuela, it was producing 3.3 million barrels a day. And today it's
You should have stayed. See what happens.
I'm not suggesting that those two events are necessarily connected, but the degradation and the destruction of the Venezuelan oil industry by the Chavez-Maduro regime is quite extraordinary. I think there are various factors at play here. The United States, I believe, is already looking to 2024. And it's looking back to what happened in 2022 during the run-up to the midterm elections, when oil prices, for various reasons, were rising. It fed through to prices at the pump for US drivers, which, as we all know, is a very, very sensitive political issue. As we move into 2024 and the presidential election looms, that any threat that prices at the pump will rise again to the kind of levels we saw in 2022, the administration wants to prevent that. And part of the reason for the outreach towards Iran that we've seen in recent months, with a potential revival of the nuclear deal, and now the outreach to Venezuela, I believe, being perhaps too cynical for my age, frankly, is part of the US desire to keep supplies as high as possible to keep prices from rising. Now, as far as Venezuela specifically is concerned, I don't think we should get too excited about what might happen in the next few months. The estimates from some people that I've seen this week who really do know what's going on the ground there suggest that at most 200,000 barrels a day of extra crude could come on stream during 2024. The timing of it is not exactly clear. Beyond that, the degradation of Venezuela's industry is so extreme that it is going to take a very long time and a very, very large amount of dollars from somewhere to get the industry back on an upward growth trajectory. So let's not get too excited about Venezuela. Although personally, I think I'm very happy that there could be an improvement in the situation there. There could be a return to some degree of fair elections, and the economy and the social situation may calm down, and the bleeding of resources from Venezuela, anywhere from 5 to 7 million people have left the country in the last 10, 15 years. A lot of the skilled professional people who would support the oil industry if it were to receive investment have left the country. So, there's a long way to go in Venezuela.
Ali, the same sort of thought for you moving into the new year of OPEC, as you said, they've got to meet in a few weeks in Vienna to sort of lay out plans for the new year. As we move into a weaker economic framework, more supply from Latin America and elsewhere, is there appetite in OPEC plus that the holders of this agreement? Of course, Venezuela is part of OPEC, as is Iran and so on, but they're not part of the supply agreement. Within those countries that are party to the supply agreement, and then obviously Saudi carrying the extra bucket outside of that, would there be appetite to make further cuts? Would there be expectation or appetite, do you think, for Saudi to carry an even heavier bucket by itself in order to maintain current market balance?
I don't think so, Sean. I don't think so. I think they have carried enough burden for themselves, the Saudis and also the Russians. And I don't think that they will accept to continue for next year even. I mean, extra. I'm talking about extra cuts.
Yeah.
But the rollover, I think it is going to happen. But any extra cuts, I don't think that they will agree on that unless others also participate on the cuts. So that is my reading for the next year, for the next meeting, for the next year. Going back again about Venezuela with Neil, I think I fully agree with him that it may take some time, but for them to come back and produce to normal size, at least extra 1 million. But I don't. We always think that the countries, they don't have the ability to grow their production. But most of these countries, they take us by surprise. It happens with Iran before. And we said that for Iranians, it will take them sometimes until they come back. If you remember, 7-8 years ago, and they didn't take them. They didn't took them 3 to 4 months to come back to 3.5 million at that time. So I won't be surprised. I know the situation in Venezuela is more difficult than maybe from Iran, but I won't be surprised that to see the production from Venezuela coming faster than anticipated.
Especially if you've got big American companies going in there like Chevron.
Exactly, yeah. And they are ready to come in. I mean, they're just waiting for the green light to go in and start doing it again. But I'm sure that it will need more investment, more money, more facilities to be there. But again, these guys have the ability to grow their production very fast and to surprise everybody.
Daniel, last word to you with the survey result. The outlook, obviously, from back to Daniel to where we started. So the disagree by a small majority in this room. Will post that on social media. But Daniel, the feeling on the street, so to speak, in Iran, is this situation in Palestine, is it a massive story? Are people getting animated? Are they not? Certainly everybody I speak to here in the Gulf, everybody is overwhelmed by the scale of this tragedy and the burden of the Palestinian people are carrying these days. It's in everybody's conversation. It's in everybody's concern. How big? I'm just want to get some sense. In Iran, is it a massive story? Is it a small story? How does it feel on the streets there?
Actually, speaking through a social point of view, the Iranian society is very much divided. We were in political social crisis since the last year after the mandatory hijab actually crisis and clashes in the streets and demonstrations and blah blah. So some people after it's not started from that point, but it escalated from that point. Many Iranians somehow disagree with the official political points of views of the Iranian establishment, whatever it is. So many Iranians at the moment are pro-Palestinians, and some at least saying that this is not our problem and this is on the other side of the region, so we should not be involved in that. So the social-wise Iranians are divided, but political-wise, if you want to know what is going on between the Iranian elite politicians or the ones who are closely following the issue in Palestine, everybody agrees that this type of crisis has been unprecedented. You know, the number of the number of deaths toll in Israel was unprecedented. So we need to wait and see how Israel is going to respond to this action. And
I think we're seeing that. I mean, that's as clear as, and they haven't even gone in on the ground, which could be the events of the coming week, which in itself is kind of hard to even imagine what the scale of what is coming for the world to digest and sit on its hands. We're going to have to leave it there. It's for all of us to think about over the weekend and pray that somehow there's a miracle that this even greater tragedy doesn't transpire in the coming days. Ali Al-Rayami, as always, from Muscat, thank you for your insights. Dalian Rahmat from Tehran, great to have you. And Neil Atkinson from Paris. I don't know if rugby's coming home this weekend, but enjoy it. There's some great matches all lined up. And tonight, isn't it? Or tomorrow, England are playing tomorrow, I think.
Tomorrow, yeah, but tonight is the big one. Rotherham United against Ipswich Town. That's what matters to me.
There you go. Rotherham United. Well, let's hope one of them scores a goal. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. All the best.
See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye-bye.